Welcome back, everybody, to the Revolution of Being podcast with Angie and Jess. So, we're continuing our conversation on all the autoimmunity issues we're seeing everywhere. It's across the world. And we've talked about a lot of different things. And honestly, a lot of it comes right back to our gut. I've learned that over the years. Angie's learned that over the years. We're seeing the resources come out now that are citing this scientifically, saying that our gut is way more important than we were ever led to believe. So, at the end of the day, if your gut isn't happy, nothing else in your body can be. Your immune system, your mood, your skin, your hormones, your energy levels, they're all going to be directly impacted by the microbial universe that lives within your body, within your digestive tract. So when the gut is out of balance, our inflammation is just going to go up. It's just going to rise. And when it's supported, healing will happen. We start to find homeostasis once our body has what it needs. You're not just feeding yourself. The food that you're ingesting is not just to feed you. You're feeding all these little organisms, 38 trillion microbes that help decide if you're going to feel calm or anxious, bloated or vibrant, inflamed or in flow. They're all going to help you navigate your life or help you trip up in every single area that you're in. So if you've never thought about your gut as ground zero for immune health, this episode is just going to hopefully change everything in your mind about what your gut really does.
Yeah, it's so important. And I mean, mental health, comes down to gut health and all these things that it's like, why aren't we talking about this on a bigger scale? But our usual disclaimer, none of this is medical advice. We are not intending to treat, diagnose, or heal anything with this episode. This does not replace talking with your own doctor. So the information presented today is meant to be for informational purposes. So when we talk about the gut, it really is like, we talk about gut instinct, right? Like we have this gut instinct, this intuition. Our gut is our second brain. And we've heard that before, but it's so freaking true. And, 70 to 80% of our immune system is located within our gut, like within our gut. And then more specifically, this gut associated lymphoid tissue, which is our lymph tissue. And the microbiome, which, as you said, Jess, those little tiny microbes that are controlling everything within our body, help regulate our immune tolerance. So, what our bodies fight, if we have an allergy to peanuts, or what our body accepts. Maybe I do fine with shellfish, but you don't. It helps with nutrient absorption. Our microbiome helps with our hormone and our neurotransmitter production, and also with detoxification. So, via our bile, which is our gallbladder, and then pooping through our stool. So when our gut lining is compromised, these toxins in our body or undigested food particles or pathogens essentially leak into the bloodstream. And our gut lining is only one cell deep, which is crazy. When I learned this stuff in nursing school, it I don't know, it just didn't shock me at the time, I guess, because I didn't think about it, but we have one layer of cells that line our gut. So that can get destroyed really freaking easily. I mean, our skin has so many different layers of cells that, protect it. Our gut has one. And what happens when we have any kind of chronic stress, drink alcohol, have foods that are inflammatory, those junctions begin to, for those who are watching, you can see, but our junctions begin to space out. And so basically we have these little gaps between these tight junctions that allow these toxins to move through. And so when that happens, that's when we see autoimmunity or chronic inflammation. And our gut is really like, when you think of like computer technology, right? Like it's kind of like this protective firewall preventing, viruses from getting into the computer. Our gut is like that as well. And if it's damaged, our entire system can be exposed to illness, injury, issues. So it's a big deal.
All right. So there are some common symptoms that we've talked about so many times that if you are in a state of dysbiosis, so if you've never heard of the term dysbiosis, I guarantee you that if you start looking this up, going down the rabbit hole, you're going to see this term. All it really means is a shift in your microbiome. So it means there's a shift in your gut happening. So when you see that term, we're just talking about the shift. So how it looks though, brain fog, anxiety, mood swings. So if you're finding yourself like, okay, one day, not okay the next day, and no circumstances have changed, It's very well that. Joint pain is a big one. Joint pain, thinking that we're kind of in like stages of early arthritis, it's a huge sign of inflammation, dysbiosis, a shift that's happened in your gut with your bacteria levels. Skin rashes. Personally, I've dealt with this on and off for most of my life. When I got really bad after having heavy metal poisoning, like acutely, for the next year of my life, I went into a very big state of dysbiosis. And I could eat dairy, and then suddenly I would get these eruptions, and it looked like maybe psoriasis, but it was like a deep eczema that would destroy a week of my life, and it would spread and it hurt. And I felt like, when your kids get chicken pox and you have to put little socks on their hands, to keep them from scratching their own face off. That's how I felt. But that was a huge sign that my gut was out of whack. Acne is included, especially cystic. So I always was taught that your outer body, your skin and all that stuff is just a reflection of what's actually happening internally. So there's just, it's mirroring that. Constant fatigue. And I'm not just talking about long day, tired, ready for bed. I'm talking about that groggy, almost feeling drugged fatigue where you're weak, you're just struggling, you got to lay down and nap. And it's not a bad thing to feel like that on occasion, because sometimes we just need that. But we're talking about like the everyday stuff. Histamine issues, flushing, congestion, itchiness. After I'd had a surgery and had to be on some of the, high painkillers, when my body was trained to detox from it, there must have been a huge shift in my microbiome, of course. And for almost 6 months, I would get hives all over my body and want to itch my own skin off. And that was a huge sign of my body just reacting. So that is another sign. Poor immune resilience. So if you're getting sick a lot, autoimmune flares, again, that sore throat, feeling like you're getting reoccurring colds. Man, it's another big sign we don't have enough of the beneficial bacteria, and we're not able to kind of combat that. Food sensitivities, nutrient deficiencies, again, malabsorption. If we're sensitive to a lot of food, we're probably not absorbing the necessary minerals and nutritional things that we need. And so we live in this hyper vigilant state of constantly, maybe craving, trying to nourish our body and not being able to get nourished. So we have like chronic obesity in the US, but we also have the most malnourished people in the world, which is just a mind boggler right there. So if your symptoms, though, seem like they're random, you're running to the doctor because I got the rash, and then you're running in because you got another sinus infection, and you're running in because now your joints hurt. Maybe you need an injection. You need all these things. So you're running in, running in, and running in. Our Western medicine model has traditionally taught us that they're all separate. They've isolated everything. Like you get a drug for this, and you get a drug for that, and you get a drug for this. Don't look at it like that. Stop looking at it like that. Look at it like this is all part of the same problem. And chances are, not a doctor, but if you went to the right people, chances are you could tie every symptom back to your gut health.
Mhm. Yeah, the gut is so important. And, you mentioned dysbiosis, which is simply that imbalance of the good versus the opportunistic or not so good microbiomes. And people are like, well, how do you get that? Well, all of us have leaky gut to some extent, right? And so dysbiosis is also essentially leaky gut. And it's triggered if you've ever had antibiotics in your life. You have leaky gut, right? If you've ever had stress or alcohol, you have leaky gut. If you've ever eaten foods that are not, super healthy, you got leaky gut. If you've been exposed to pesticides, like all of us have, you have leaky gut. And so it's not to say that we shouldn't on occasion use an antibiotic if we need to, right? I'm a big believer in time and place. But if we can prevent it and optimize our immune function, some of those things, let's try to get rid of some of the assaults on our body. And again, these cause directly leaky gut and inflammation, and they can be chronic. And it takes, I forget what I read recently, but it takes like a year or more after one round of antibiotics for your gut to just kind of recalibrate. I mean, it really does damage on the body. Again, I'm not saying they're not good. But, sometimes you need it, but you have control over if you're drinking alcohol or not. You have control over, the lifestyle you lead if it's high stress. That's something that you and I talk about too is like, man, the need for vacations, the need for downtime to manage stress, the need for like just the daily self-care that we have control over, and so we do what we can in those areas. Something I see really commonly with folks, and I dealt with this over a year ago, was candida overgrowth. And so that's a fungal imbalance driven by also antibiotics, high amounts of sugar, can be from birth control. And so the symptoms of that are also fatigue. You can have crazy high sugar cravings, brain fog, skin issues, yeast infections. So I had really high sugar cravings and I was getting chronic yeast infections, which was so weird because I hadn't been on antibiotics. Like there was no direct link to why I had that. So I ended up doing this autoimmune diet that eliminated all sugar, anything that could feed candida for 3 months, and it wiped it out. It was amazing how different I felt once I starved the yeast from, or the candida rather from the sugars that it was getting fed. But yeah, if you have really high sugar cravings and you've got kind of skin issues or yeast infections, if you're a lady, that's a common presentation of candida. And the doctors will convince you you just need more antibiotics, you need more of these certain kind of things to wipe it out. Don't listen. I mean, do what you need to. I shouldn't say don't listen to your doctor. Do what you need to. But that's just going to further perpetuate your problem. The real cure is truly just to like starve it of the sugar it's getting. And that also is in dairy, it's in sugar, it's in carbohydrates. So you have to be really diligent about, dealing with that. SIBO is another issue that's very, very common. So that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that is basically bacteria beginning to grow in the small intestines where it should not be growing. And for those who have SIBO, what they often experience is bloating, especially after meals. They're like, oh my God, I just ate and I just feel like friggin' 9 months pregnant. Or, a lot of like constipation slash diarrhea, gastroesophageal reflux, so GERD. And it's often a misdiagnosis. People will actually say this is more IBS, like, oh, you have irritable bowel syndrome, but in fact, it's SIBO. And it can be really not an easy diagnosis to get. The diagnosis that I'm aware of is more of a breath test that tests for I forget what it looks for exactly, but how they do it, but it's kind of more of the functional realm way of testing for SIBO. I do know some people who've gotten tested for that within the Western medicine realm, but it's quite the to do to get this done that way. And then, treatment, again, Western medicine is more antibiotics and this whole regimen, which is going to further your other issues. So you have to be mindful of there are plenty of antiviral or antibacterial holistic alternatives that are gentler but equally effective. So those are some, there's a lot more in terms of like different gut imbalances, but those are kind of the big ones that we see that I just wanted to explain a little bit more. And so Jess, tell us a little bit more about like that gut brain axis and kind of how that interrelates.
So this one is fascinating. And I remember when I first learned about it. So this gut brain connection, this is the immune superhighway. And so if you've ever heard about the vagus nerve, it is a really neat part of the human body. And so this vagus nerve actually connects to a lot of different things, but one of the main areas that connects to is from your gut up through to your brain. So there's a direct correlation. And it's kind of like our body has two brains. We have our gut brain and we have our brain, and they do communicate. So whenever you hear somebody say, I just have that gut feeling, yeah, we're talking about your vagus nerve. This is really important. So if you ever, want to go down that rabbit hole, polyvagal theory is just fascinating. So this gut brain communication happens via the vagus nerve. And when this gets interrupted, there's just this separation between how we feel and what we think. And it's really hard to connect with ourselves, and it's really hard to find just kind of the state of health. One thing that fascinated me was understanding that serotonin. So serotonin is the thing that wakes us up. It makes us feel, maybe happy and here and all that stuff. It's also produced in our gut. In fact, a lot of it's produced in our gut. Here, I thought it was just a brain chemical, but learning that 90% of it is produced in our gut just kind of blew my mind. Only a small portion of it is actually produced in the brain. So, can you imagine just having this really whacked out gut system and thinking that you just need antidepressants to feel better? And, a lot of people believe that because, again, the Western medicine model has decided to separate all these body parts and symptoms. And again, it's all going to come back to one. Chronic gut inflammation. Again, mood swings, anxiety, depression. Here's what I can tell you personally is that as somebody who has eaten very clean for about 20 years, of course, I lived a healthy 90-10 rule. And so whenever my 10% would kick in and I'd have the wine, I'd have the chocolate, I'd have the pizza, I would have the fun, there was usually a course of days that followed where I felt kind of down in the dumps and I felt more volatile, more angry. I definitely could feel like some of those old symptoms of depression or extra anxiety. I was a little more on edge. So if you're feeling like you're living in that state day in and day out, you could really just have chronic inflammation within your gut. The immune system reads your gut signals to know whether it's going to want to calm down or attack. That's your immune system. All this stuff works in collaboration. And when we think about the role of our gut, that's why we're talking about it at this level. Because when it regulates every other thing in your body, it's really hard to get out of a state of survival. Think of how many just unhealthy relationships there are purely because of our lifestyle causing gut inflammation. We're reactive. We're living in this frenzy of reaction. The fastest way to calm the mind, it could be a little bit more through the microbiome and obviously addressing the mindset simultaneously. I think that both are really, really, really important. So if you're just focusing on the mindset and you're still struggling, it could be because you're dealing with a lot of gut inflammation. And if you're just dealing with the gut and you find yourself still struggling, it might be because you're not in the mindset. You haven't changed your identity. And that gets kind of tricky and that can be a lot for people to swallow. But when you really think about it, this is the stage of life we're at. This is the integration between body, mind, spirit. It's all of it. And if we don't start looking at this in the wholest sense, we're not really honoring the human experience in totality. We're just kind of bypassing one area of it for another area of it. And that's the hard part for a lot of us.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming, and that's where I'm kind of a unicorn in my field as a hypnotherapist who also educates heavily on functional health because I tell people you can't just focus on mindset while still living a life where your diet's garbage, and these other areas that need addressing. And as you mentioned, it's an identity shift and it is integrative. You do need all the pieces, but at some points of your journey, some pieces might be more the front runners needing additional attention compared to other areas. And so it's very integrative and find a practitioner who practices that way where they're willing to talk about mind, body, spirit and helping you piece that together. Now they may not be the person to help you with all those pieces, right? Because they may be specializing in one area, but a good practitioner is going to refer you to the other people that are going to be able to help put those pieces into the puzzle for you. So when it comes to gut healing, I know when I was doing my journey, and even sometimes still, I get a little overwhelmed because there are so many freaking hacks and tools and people that have their protocols and all this crap. But when we simplify it down, some of the most basic, simple things you can do for gut healing again involve food. So make sure you're getting prebiotic foods. So you want to feed the good bacteria within the body. So that's like your garlic, your onions, your leeks, artichokes, green bananas. So those are some great ways to kind of help on the front end with feeding bacteria, but also know it's not always easily or well tolerated in early gut healing if you have if you have like SIBO or different things and your gut's really, really struggling, go really slow. Like, I consume garlic and onions regularly, so that's not a problem for me. But for some people, if they're not used to and they just front load all this stuff, it might be a little bit triggering. Um, Probiotics too are also fantastic and they can be supportive, but they're not one size fits all. So you really want to have like a spore-based probiotic and they are better tolerated, in dysbiosis or with SIBO. You also want to make sure that you get ones that are refrigerated. So if you find one that's shelf stable, those do not tend to make it into your gut. Like they're just not getting broken down and utilized. And again, quality matters. So do research on the high quality probiotics that are out there because they're super expensive. But you can even get probiotics from foods like I like kimchi or sauerkraut. So those are really good. You can do like a brine fermented pickle. Or if you're someone who does dairy, I don't do super well with dairy right now, but if I did do better with dairy, I would be using Greek yogurt, kefir or kefir, however you say that. Um, and some of the plant-based options. So I do coconut yogurt, but you want to make sure that they actually are adding live cultures into it. You can also do fermented coconut water or coconut kefir. And so kombucha is good too, but again, they might be a little bit more high sugar. So you have to be mindful of that. And then fiber. So fiber is a great way to help bulk up your stool. So, it can help if you're having constipation or if you're having diarrhea, but it also helps feed the good microbiota. And then with fiber too, you want to start slow and low because you're going to otherwise get gas and bloating. So some of the top foods that are good for high fiber, again, artichokes, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, carrots, cauliflower. For fruits, I really love raspberries. Those are also kind of a lower glycemic index, so lower on the blood sugar. Apples are a little bit higher in sugar, as well as pears and figs. Avocados are great too for that. If you're someone who tolerates or likes grains, oats, especially steel cut, organic, like non-gluten oats are fantastic. Quinoa, and then, of course, legumes, if you do well with legumes, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, navy beans, all that stuff. And then, of course, there are some seeds, which again, some people tolerate seeds and nuts well, others not so much. So kind of do your research there and see how you feel. Another thing that I really, really enjoy is bone broth. So bone broth is great for healing the gut lining. So you can do that on an empty stomach in the morning. And that can really help to support gut lining healing. And there's some good, I found some good like bone broth based protein powders that I also will use like in a little bit of yogurt as well. And then cooked vegetables, they are easier. So if your gut's really inflamed, like a raw vegan diet or a raw food diet, it's going to be really hard on your tummy. So cooked veggies are always better in that case. And again, fermented foods are fantastic. Um, if you're really serious about gut healing, and this is what you and I have done on occasion, and it works really well, you want to avoid all gluten, all dairy, all refined sugar, any seed oils. All of those harm the gut lining. And of course, alcohol. Some people will also say coffee. You can pry that out of my cold dead hands. I will keep my coffee, but I do buy Bulletproof or Four Sigmatic. And those are two brands that actually test for mold and toxins. So even though a lot of coffee will claim they're organic, they don't necessarily test for mold and toxins. So those are the two brands I use. Again, I don't get a pump for you buying this stuff, but those are the ones I really like to use that are the cleanest coffee on the market. So, some of those things can be really healing as well.
Yep. All those things are really good. The one other thing I'm going to add into there is collagen peptides. Can be really
Mhm.
good for your gut. I noticed that it made a huge difference for me. And you know what? I like the Vital Proteins brand. There's a lot of good ones, but I think they dissolve really well in my coffee that they too can pry from my cold dead hands. So I add that into my coffee. It tastes really good, but I know that it's doing something good in my body too. It's good for your joints and your gut and all those things.
Yeah.
So
And I use
beyond though,
I
what's
was gonna
that?
say the brand that I like is is it Vital Proteins or Vital Nutrients? Vital Proteins, I think. It's a really
I think
solid brand, and I use their unflavored in my coffee too. And you can't taste it. Like that's what I like about that is you can't taste it in the coffee. Um, I don't know if you're really sensitive, maybe you notice it, but my skin got so much better when I started using that, and I've been using it consistently now for probably 3 to 5 months, something I forget when I started. And my skin looks so much better. So it
oh
really,
yeah.
you can tell it works. And some people don't believe in it, but I'm like, I can sense and feel how much better, and my joints feel better too. Like I can tell it's doing whatever it needs to do.
Yes, it definitely works. So beyond the diet, there's other gut healing essentials that we need to do to support it if we really want to have a full support. Nervous system regulation, we just keep beating this one with the bat because it's such a big deal. You cannot digest when you're in fight or flight. You can't. Been there, done that. It's just can't happen. So you need to rest and digest, rest and digest. So prioritizing breath work, meditation. Sometimes I will just go lay out in my grass, walk around barefoot, there's something about it that I can feel my system calm. You don't have to do a big retreat, but my God, if you can do it, you don't have to go to Costa Rica and reset your body, but there's no shame against it if you want to, but you can do this in 10, 15 minutes in your own home. Just lay down, just chill out for a while. Movement, gentle exercise like walking, bouncing, yoga, stretching, any of that is going to get that lymph flow that you really want. And it's going to help your nervous system just kind of calm down. That's why a lot of people feel better after they go for a run. I think that there's a huge part of that. Our lymph system gets that action. And I do think it just kind of calms our body. I don't always think it's just about the endorphins. I think there is something there. Sleep. If you can get yourself into a sleep cadence, you're going to benefit. So we put our kids to bed at a certain time every night. We get them up at a certain time in the morning. Everybody's a little different. I would say 6 to 9 hours of sleep is the range that human beings are probably at, but it's more about consistency, and it's about having a little bit of a wind down ritual, right? Maybe you're minimizing screen time an hour before you go to bed. Maybe you're just meditating. Maybe you're, you know, reading, whatever it is. And then you have the same kind of a wake up cycle. Like, what do you do in the morning when you wake up? Are you waking up and starting your stress cycle right away? Are you right on social media? Are you watching the news? All this matters. And before you go to bed, same. So get your sleep, prioritize that, fix your sleep, and it'll fix a lot of things. You mentioned this, hydrating with minerals. We we've been taught like 8 glasses of water a day. You and I have had this conversation where, number one, who said that? Who said that? I think we're all very different. Um, More than anything, we need essential minerals. Minerals make the world go round. So not just drinking your tap water, because we know that that's full of stuff. I love the Elite brand, and it comes in a bottle. My body craves it. Some people don't like the taste. It's just clear, and it's my basic potassium, sodium, magnesium. And I just dump that into every 40 ounces of water that I drink. And I cannot get enough of it because my body definitely wants it. But I've used the Element as well. It's really good. A lot of those same magnesium, potassium, and sodium, higher amounts of sodium, which are good for your adrenals. And any other kind of hydrating minerals that you can add into your water are going to help your whole system regulate itself. Your digestion will improve and you're going to feel so much better. But side note, your hair is going to improve, your nails are going to improve, your eyes are going to improve. It all improves. So those are the big things that you can do outside of your diet that are going to make a huge difference in the outcome of your day to day as well.
Yeah, and for those on the journey, this is not linear. Setbacks, you and I have been there. I've had some more recently that are discouraging, but it's a part of the healing journey. And every time a setback happens, it's really a launching pad for a new level of growth. And for me, it just helps me get to know myself better on a new level and refine. The things that used to work for me don't work anymore. And I'm learning new things about myself. And that's a good thing. I'm learning what I can tolerate, what I can't tolerate. And it's been incredible. I wouldn't take this back for anything, as much as that sounds probably like lunacy to say, because man, do I miss my 10-mile runs and do I miss some of the stuff I used to do. But I didn't know myself the way I do. So it's common to have these little bumps in the road, and it's just a redirection. It's a course correction. It's an opportunity to reevaluate something in your life. And when you get quiet long enough, you're going to get the inspiration for what that is. And I think if anything else, I'll leave with, you are your own healer. You know, Jess is not your healer. I am not your healer. None of us are your healers. You have to be the one to do the work. That's not to say you're not going to have partners that are walking beside you with knowledge, with compassion, with an open heart to help. But ultimately, it's us that are having to do the work ourselves. And that was abundantly clear to me over a year ago, that I can no longer outsource this and that I have to figure this out. Not meaning I have to figure it out myself, but I was told very loudly in meditation, I need to shut the hell up. Like I need to stop. And we can get really frantic because it's so physical and it's so real. And you and I have been there. And man, I will tell you, when I'm losing my hair, it is fucking frustrating beyond all ends because it is such a physical representation of what's happening in my body. and I feel this desperate need to want to fix it, or when my insomnia, has been incredibly high, it's so frustrating because you can't deny the body's experience. But those are the opportunities to lean in more to, like, what am I missing? If you're someone who prays, pray about it. If you're someone who meditates, ask for guidance in meditation or synchronicities, because they will come through, but we have to slow down to receive the messages. So, in this process, you're not broken. Your gut, your body, it might be a little bruised and battered, but that's life. That's humaning. We're all humaning here on this planet, and it's not easy. And, when you approach this journey with compassion to yourself and consistency, the body does respond. And, for those of us that are the recovering perfectionists, healing is not about perfection. It's about this consistency, and it's about connection to ourselves, to our body, to our intuition. And that's really the end all, of it. So go easy on yourself. There's a reason, I believe, and this is a spiritual thing, and you can be like, shut up. But I believe there's a reason that all of us are going through this right now. And I think it is to wake us up to the power we have within, but to also break us of the old thought paradigms of outsourcing our healing to those beyond us. Like, we've got to figure this out, and we're the only ones that can make a difference and know our body to the level we can. So on that note, thanks for tuning in. Again, next time we'll be diving in, I think it's next episode, into the nervous system. So keep tuning into the series, because we're going to kind of continue to peel back the layers of this onion. And as always, reach out with any questions. If you need any help or additional resources or support, we're here for you.
We'll see you next time, guys.
See ya.